Hi. I'm going to keep my intro short. Today I'm talking about the Shoreham Air Crash. I live in the south of England, so the Shoreham Air Crash is a pretty big deal to me and to my family. On top of that, it only happened in 2015. So to me it seems quite fresh and relatively recent. And it's pretty near to where I live. I feel like it's, like a lot of other recent events, been kind of forgotten. And taking a quick glance around YouTube, it seems to not really be covered much by other similar channels, so I thought I'd cover it here. Today we're going to be talking about the tragedy of the Shoreham Air Crash. The Shoreham Air Crash was an airshow disaster that occurred on the 22nd of August 2015. It was the deadliest airshow accident in the United Kingdom since the 1952 Farnborough airshow crash. The aircraft type was a British Hawker Hunter T-7, once used by the RAF in the 1940s and 50s. The pilot, Andy Hill, 51, was an experienced RAF and British Airways pilot who had flown in numerous airshows prior to this incident. He was seriously injured but survived. 11 innocent civilians died in this accident, and a further 16 were injured. Andy Hill was 51 and carried a relevant private pilot's licence, as well as an airline transport pilot's licence. He also had 14,249 hours of flight experience and had 53 hours in the month leading up to the disaster. Hill joined the Royal Air Force, RAF, in 1985 and flew Jet Provost, Hawk and Harrier jet aircraft. He was a qualified flying instructor, QFI, on the Jet Provost between 1988 and 1990. In his RAF pilot's logbook, he had recorded his total flying time in military jet aircraft as Jet Provost Mk 3A5A, 934 hours. Hawk Mk1 1A, 188 hours. Harrier T4 GR3, GR57, 517 hours. He began aerobatic display training in 1989, although it wasn't until 2011 that he began training to fly the Hunter with a display team. In order to do so, he was required to hold an aircraft type rating exemption in training. This was issued on the 19th of May 2011 and was valid until the 18th of May 2012. These get updated regularly, and his most recent renewal before the crash took place on the 27th of August 2014. It would have expired on the 27th of August 2015 5 days after the crash. The Shoreham Air Show was an air show that took place at Brighton City Airport, most commonly known as Shoreham Airport. It was organised by the RAF. It specialised in showcasing aerobatics from RAF planes and had raised $1.5 million for the RAF over 21 years. It has since been cancelled. Andy Hill, as stated, was an experienced pilot with many thousands of hours of flight experience. The Hunter started its display with a low pass along the runway from south to north, turning for a second pass in the opposite direction. As it neared the airport, it pulled up into an inside loop. This manoeuvre started from a height of 200 feet or 60 metres. The problem with this was that, as leading aviation expert David Learmount later said, it left no room for misjudgment. The loop should have been started at a height of 500 feet, 150 metres, and a speed of at least 350 knots, or 650 kilometres per hour, attaining a height of 4,000 feet, or 1,200 metres, and 150 knots, or 280 kilometres an hour, at the top of the loop. Only 2,700 feet, 820 metres, and 105 knots, 194 kilometres per hour, were achieved from an initial entry speed of 310 knots, or 570 kilometres per hour. Before it could complete the loop, the aircraft crashed onto the westbound carriageway of the A27 road, not motorway. The aircraft broke into 4 parts on impact: cockpit, left wing and main body, tail and right wing, destroying several cars in the process. Fuel escaping from the fuel tanks ignited in a large fireball, and a plume of smoke immediately followed the impact. The crash occurred at 1:22 p.m. British Standard Time. The first fire services arrived at the scene within 90 seconds of the crash. 11 people died in this accident, all men. Due to the recent nature of the disaster, high-quality photographs and biographies are available for all individuals, and I think it's appropriate to mention them all here. Tony Brightwell was a 53-year-old health manager for Sussex Partnership NHS and Brighton and Hove City Council. The aircraft enthusiast from Hove had travelled to the West Sussex Air Show by bicycle to watch the planes. Brightwell had learned to fly at the airport and regularly visited the airfield and had a private pilot's licence. Graham Mallinson was a retired engineer who had driven to the air show and was standing beside the A27 because he wanted to photograph one of the last flights of the Vulcan bomber. The 72-year-old keen photographer from Newark, East Sussex, was described as being at the right place at the wrong time, doing what he loved best on a beautiful summer's day. His family also said he was the kindest and most generous man who regularly gave his time to help others. Jacob Schilt was a footballer travelling with his Worthing United teammate Matthew Grimstone on their way to a game when their vehicle was struck by the aircraft. In a statement, the club described him as small in stature and a tenacious midfielder, as well as being very skillful, with an eye for a goal. Matthew Grimstone, also 23, his parents Sue and Phil and brothers David and Paul said he was the kindest person you could ever meet, with a great wit, in an emotional tribute. Football was his passion in life, and he loved working at Brighton and Hove Albion as well as playing for Worthing United. The Mavericks unveiled a stand and memorial garden for Mr. Schilt and Mr. Grimstone and held a series of matches to help raise money for its memorial fund. Maurice Abrahams was a 76-year-old wedding chauffeur, driving a Daimler while en route to collect a bride in Worthing. His death was rapid, and his car was knocked over to the other side of the road in flames, a court heard. In a statement issued through Sussex Police, his family said, "Maurice is a well-respected and loved father and husband. He enjoyed his work chauffeuring his beloved Daimler car, and he enjoyed gardening." He was proud to have served in the Grenadier Guards and the Parachute Regiment. He served in Cyprus and Bahrain with the UN. In his 30s, he served as a police officer with Hampshire Police. Matt Jones was a 24-year-old man, giving Daniel Polito a lift in a BMW when the plane crashed. The colleagues had been on a construction job in Shoreham. Mr. Jones, who also worked as a personal trainer, was named on Facebook by his sister as one of the victims. "Thank you to everyone who has messaged me. We are devastated to say Matt Jones was one of the fatalities," she wrote. The aforementioned Daniel Polito had been in the same vehicle as Matt Jones when the Hawker Hunter plane crashed and exploded on the A27. In an emotional Facebook post, his sister Marina Polito wrote, "I miss you loads already, little, big, bro. Keep making people smile." She added that many people loved her brother and would miss him loads. Mark Reeves was a 53-year-old on a Honda Hornet motorbike and had been standing at the side of the road to watch the show when he was killed. The computer-aided design technician living in West London had raised money for cancer charities by parachuting and abseiling. His family said in a statement, "Mark Reeves, motorbiker, golfer, photographer, fundraiser, but above all else, son, brother, husband, father and grandfather." As many times before, he had travelled to an air show and parked up on the outskirts to grab the best photos, but he had never been to the Shoreham Air Show before. Dylan Archer, a keen cyclist, was on his way to meet friends on the South Downs with friend Richard Smith when they were struck by the aircraft. The 42-year-old IT company director grew up in the Midlands and moved to Brighton in 1991. He left behind a partner, Alice, and their 2 sons. Mr. Archer was described as a kind and loving father with a dry humour and generous nature. 26-year-old cyclist Richard Smith was raised in Buckinghamshire before going to university in Birmingham. He worked in a cycle shop in Cosham before going into marketing and web development when he moved to Hove. His passions included his family, friends and beloved bikes, his family said in a statement. His boundless enthusiasm was infectious, it read. He was a truly wonderful, caring and loving person. He will be so sorely missed by all who knew him. Finally, 54-year-old Mark Trusler had gone to watch the air show on a Suzuki motorbike and had been standing next to the road. The father of 6, who worked as a window cleaner and builder, was buried in 2 separate funeral services after police identified more of his remains 2 months after the first memorial. His fiancée, Giovanna Chirico, said she had lost her best friend, soulmate and sidekick in a Facebook post. "So glad I got to spend the last 12 years of my life with you and love you always and eternally," she added.
The prosecution strongly contests any suggestion that Andy Hill was incapacitated and therefore not responsible for the crash and the 11 deaths, saying as an experienced pilot he'd have recognised G-forces and known how to deal with them. Instead, they say, it was a catalogue of pilot errors that made the crash inevitable, and they describe Andy Hill's flying that day as truly exceptionally bad.
The accident was determined to have primarily been Andy Hill's fault. The findings of the report essentially state that there are 2 main reasons for the crash, being, number 1, the aircraft did not achieve sufficient height at the apex of the accident manoeuvre to complete it before impacting the ground, because the combination of low entry speed and low engine thrust in the upward half of the manoeuvre was insufficient. Number 2. An escape manoeuvre was not carried out despite the aircraft not achieving the required minimum apex height. There were also other reasons which contributed to the accident. These were: the pilot either did not perceive that an escape manoeuvre was necessary or did not realise that one was possible at the speed achieved at the apex of the manoeuvre. The pilot had not received formal training to escape from the accident manoeuvre in a Hunter and had not had his competence to do so assessed. The pilot had not practiced the technique for escaping from the accident manoeuvre in a Hunter and did not know the minimum speed from which an escape manoeuvre could be carried out successfully. A change of ground track during the manoeuvre positioned the aircraft further east than planned, producing an exit track along the A27 dual carriageway. The manoeuvre took place above an area occupied by the public over which the organisers of the flying display had no control. The severity of the outcome was due to the absence of provisions to mitigate the effect of an aircraft crashing in an area outside the control of the organisers of the flying display.
About 2,000 of these built, some abroad. Many modified, came back, modified to later variants. Rolls-Royce Avon, supersonic, almost without limitation. Early changes to the wing design and the addition of a fuselage air brake improved the handling. Some of my friends did engine-out landings in these. But the Avon, a remarkable engine, the Rolls-Royce Avon. That is such a beautiful airplane. Notice the humidity in the atmosphere. For the first time, we've seen some cloud forming off the wings. Ooh.
Proceedings against Hill began at Westminster Magistrates Court, London, on the 19th of April 2018. Hill indicated that he would enter pleas of not guilty, and was bailed to appear at the Old Bailey on the 17th of May. The trial there started on the 15th of May, when Hill pleaded not guilty, and was adjourned until the 14th of January 2019. Hill was granted bail. A pre-trial review took place on the 8th of January 2019. Hill indicated that his defence was to be that he had been disabled by G-forces during the flight. The trial at the Old Bailey resumed as scheduled on the 14th of January before Mr Justice Edis. On the 15th of January, a jury of 8 women and 4 men was selected from 56 members of the public, who had passed initial screening. On the 17th of January, the jury was shown video of the accident that had not been previously released to the media. The prosecution alleged that previous incidents Hill had been involved in showed that he appeared to have a cavalier attitude to safety and played fast and loose with the rules. On the 4th of February, the court decamped to Gatwick Aviation Museum, Charlwood, Surrey, which has a Hawker Hunter on display. Jurors were shown the aircraft's controls and the instruments were explained to them. They were given the opportunity to sit in the cockpit of the aircraft and touch the flying controls. Both prosecution and defence provided an expert witness to assist the jury. Hill did not attend the museum. On 8th of March 2019, Hill was found not guilty on each of the 11 counts of manslaughter by gross negligence. The jury reached unanimous decisions on each of the counts following 7 hours of deliberation. The judge also formally acquitted Hill on the count of negligently or recklessly endangering the safety of an aircraft, which had not been put to the jury. At the conclusion of the trial, Edis commended the relatives of the victims on the very dignified way they had behaved. Relatives of the victims stated that they were devastated by the verdict. Sussex police paid tribute to their dignity, adding that they respected the jury's decision. Outside the court after the trial, Hill read out the names of all those killed in the incident, saying, "I am truly sorry for the part I played in their deaths, and it is all I will remember for the rest of my life."
1,295 days ago, I lost control of an aircraft, resulting in the deaths of Maurice Abrahams, Dylan Archer, Tony Brightwell, James Mallinson, Matthew Grimston, Matt Jones, Daniele Polito, Mark Reeves, Jacob Schilt, Richard Smith, Mark Trussler. A number of people were injured. I'm truly sorry for the part I played in their deaths, and it is they that I will remember for the rest of my life.
A coroner's inquest was opened on the 2nd of September in Horsham, West Sussex. After the naming of all the victims and a minute's silence, the inquest was adjourned until the 22nd of March 2016. On the 22nd of March, a date was set for a pre-inquest review on the 19th of September. It was revealed that the police had applied to the High Court for permission to obtain evidence relevant to the investigation from the AAIB. A full hearing was proposed to take place in March 2017. In September 2016, it was reported that a second pre-inquest review had been set for the 21st of November. A further pre-inquest review hearing was set for the 17th of March 2017. This was later rescheduled to the 20th of June. At the pre-inquest hearing, Sussex Police stated that its investigation was 95% complete. It intended to submit a file to the Crown Prosecution Service, which would decide whether or not a prosecution would actually take place. It was intended that the inquest would be held during 2018, but any criminal prosecution would further delay it. In October 2017, the coroner stated that she had been updated by Sussex Police on the 29th of September, with a further update due on the 30th of November. A third pre-inquest hearing had been scheduled for the 24th of January 2018, with the full inquest in September 2018, barring any prosecution, in which case the inquest would be postponed. This pre-inquest hearing was postponed to the 26th of March, as the CPS informed the coroner that it would not be able to make a decision on whether or not the pilot would face any charges by the scheduled date of 24th of January. Due to the prosecution of Hill, the inquest was postponed. Once the trial had ended, a pre-inquest review was scheduled for the 8th of April 2019. The review was held on the 29th of January 2020. The date for the inquest, which is scheduled to last for 6 weeks, was set as September 2020. The inquest will be held without a jury. The senior coroner, Penelope Schofield, ruled that the public interest can be better served by herself sitting alone. You will note that I am using the future tense here, because in May 2020 it was announced that the inquest would be postponed until this year, 2021, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and to allow families of the deceased to attend the inquest in person. So further news, I would say, awaits. Hope you enjoyed my video today. I'm struggling a bit to gain subscribers or views at the moment. It would really do me a huge favour if you could hit subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Please tell people about me. I put a lot of effort into my videos, and I really, really appreciate your custom and your views. So if you enjoyed it, please just let someone know. Also, hit me up with a comment in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.